What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 1973 Honda CB500 Cafe Racer build. This bike has had a lot of problems running. It'll run good for a little bit and then something happens and it starts running on like 2 cylinders. Uh-oh. Now it's doing that thing where it's... Why does it always do this? Now it's only running on 2 cylinders again. Hear the difference? Yep. This is what it was doing before though. It's the same dang thing. We got a big hill right here. Come on, you can do it, Bessie. Come on, you got it. Uh-oh, she doesn't have it. Oh. Yeah. And now she won't idle. Yeah, there's still tons of gas in the tank. It's like once it warms up, it just, I don't know. See if it'll start up. See, now it's running okay. Man, I don't understand this bike. Definitely seems fuel related. This is the story of how I fixed this problem once and for all and made the bike run better than it ever had. There's crud in the gas tank. Little pieces of like rust flake. The metal in the gas tank is good. I never needed to seal it or anything, but I don't think I ever actually cleaned it out properly. But then the other problem is that I never synchronized the carbs. So what I did was go ahead and buy one of those eBay carburetor synchronizers, and that is another thing we're going to be doing in this video. Oh yeah, need to replace the speedometer cable too. Oh, I just noticed my speedometer has stopped working. Might have something to do with the speedometer cable. So here's my speedometer cable right here. As you can see, it snapped. Just so close to the headlight bucket there that it was putting a lot of stress. Oh yeah, that's definitely why. So let's get the new cable in here and figure out a way to make it not snap again. Old cable out, new cable unboxed. Insert it, and the little screw goes back in. Back up you go, you sneaky bugger. I think I figured out a solution. I already had this rubber washer in there to dampen up vibration, but if I add a metal washer, that gives me just enough room to kind of ease the tension there between the cable and the headlight. There we go, I think that solves that problem. Now it's not even touching the headlight at all, so I think we're all good. Now we've got to pull off the fuel lines so we can remove the gas tank and drain all that dirty gas out of it. And then we also have to pull off the carburetors too to do some work on them. The dual outlet petcock design sucks. Still a decent amount of gas in this thing too. Okay, now I'm going to pull off the petcock. Pull this little filter out and you can see some of those chunks I was talking about in there. I don't know what that is. Looks like a piece of paint maybe. I then rinsed out the gas tank with fresh gas twice. Hopefully I got all those chunks out. Now I'm going to put the petcock back on. And then for the 50th time I had to pull the carburetors back off because the bike is just idling so rich that you can see black smoke coming out of the exhaust at idle, and there's something seriously wrong. Okay, please let this be the last time I have to pull these guys off of the bike. There we go. Alright, let's crack into these carburetors. Woo, so excited. It's only the 50th, probably 50 times now that I've done this. To check all the O-rings on the main jets. It seemed like the bike was running like stupidly rich. So if the fuel was leaking past the main jets, that could definitely cause that condition, but this one looks fine. One other thing I wanted to do was replace the pilot jets, because the ones that are in the bike are number 42 pilot jet, which is weird because the stock size is 40. It seemed like the bike is running too rich at idle. It's never really idled good, and that might be why. So I've got some number 40s here. Hopefully that helps. Only one way to find out. In you go. Then I did the same thing on the other 3 carburetors, but I'm not going to make you guys watch the same thing 4 times. Alright. Next, I'm going to replace the fuel filters. See all those chunks in there? It's definitely starting to get clogged up, I think. New fuel filters can never hurt. This one looks fine. I just replaced this not long ago, actually. So there we go. All the throttle needles we got to pull out because I have that, again, that cheap eBay carburetor rebuild kit screwed me because I think the throttle needles are in there are bad. I think they don't seal up, causing fuel to leak in through the main jet at idle, which causes the running rich condition. Probably, I think that's what's going on. So I'm going to put the factory ones back in with the clip in the middle position. Right now I have the eBay cheap ones in one clip down, slightly richer position. So the problem was that there was too much fuel getting in the engine at idle, but it was not because of the main jet O-rings or the idle or pilot jets. It was a completely different problem. And it took about 3 more carburetor pulls to actually figure that out. So let's flash forward to that. Okay, I'm pretty sure I figured out why the bike's running so rich at idle. I did the clear tube method of checking the float height in the carburetor. Basically all I did was take a weed whacker fuel line, jam it in the drain hole of the bottom of the bowl, and then run it up, fill the carburetor with gas. And as you can see, there's the fuel line right there. See it? Right there. That is above the gasket surface. It's supposed to be 1 to 2 millimeters below the gasket surface, which means my float height is wrong. Even though I checked it with a micrometer at 22 millimeters, I think it is, it's still off because it's obviously too much fuel, and that explains the super rich idle. So I'm gonna have to pull these carburetors back off the bike and change the float height. Before, when I checked it, I was actually doing it wrong. I was doing it with the carburetors upside down. When you do it like that, the float is actually pushing down on the valve a little bit, and it's gonna mess up the reading. So I'm gonna set the carburetor on its side like this, make sure it's just barely touching the top of the float needle, and let's check it with a micrometer. Oh, look at that. Yep, that's exactly what I did. I set the float height all wrong. Looks like the float was set about 2 or 3 millimeters too high, which explains the fuel level. Pull the float out, push down on the tang just a little bit, and then let's recheck. All right. Float is set perfectly now, 22 millimeters. Don't make the same mistake I did, guys. Whenever you check your float height, make sure you do it with your carburetors on their side, like that, because look how much it moves. Float height measurement. Then I had to do the same exact thing on the other 3 carburetors. And once I had all the float heights set correctly to 22 millimeters, I rechecked with the clear tube method, and all of the fuel levels in the bowls were about 2 to 3 millimeters below the gasket surface. Perfect. I didn't even know that was a problem, but it should run a lot better now. Time to balance the carburetors. Let's open up this kit. So we've got the gauges here. This is basically a vacuum / boost pressure gauge. And then it came with 4 hoses. So let's go ahead and connect those up to these gauges here. Okay, got those hoses all connected to the intake manifold. I don't know which one I'm going to use yet. Over on the bike side, on the CB500, we have a screw here on the intake manifold. It's super tight. Let's try my impact driver. Yep, that got it. And the little bag that came with it. Let's see, hopefully that fits. Nice. It only came with 2 of those brass nipples. The other ones are too big. See? For the other 2 ports that I don't have brass fittings for, I found these plastic like vacuum line. Just to make sure that plastic fitting is actually sealing, I'm going to put a tiny little O-ring around it like that. I'll actually kind of thread it in the rest of the way. Now, since I can't do this with a gas tank on, I've got these 2 tie-dye dye bottles that I filled with fuel. I'll go ahead and plug them in to the fuel inlet. There we go. Got to poke a little hole in the top of each one to allow the air to vent through so that gas actually continues to flow down to the carbs.
We've got a pizza.
Quit leaking. Now we're all ready to start up the bike and see just how synced these carbs are. Oh yeah. Not really idling. Well, I did some research online and I figured out some things. Remember these little gray plastic things that came with the synchronizer kit? Yeah, you actually need those. These are valves, and by unscrewing this cap, you're actually opening this valve up. You need to open it up precisely until you get just gradually just a little bit of a reading. If it's open all the way like it was before, it'll be super sporadic, but these gauges do still suck because the needle sometimes gets moved somehow and you have to manually move it back with your finger until it goes back to 0. And also I had to fill up these bottles again, but I couldn't fill them up with a hole on the bottom, so I got a little screw and an O-ring, and this is my new patented little fuel bottles here that I made. And there we go, we've got ventilation again. Choke off. There we go.
Adjust the synchronization of the carburetors, we first loosen up the lock nut on the throttle linkage, and then you can tighten or loosen the screw depending on which way you need to go. In my case, I needed to loosen it. And after tweaking with the adjustments, revving it up, tightening up the lock nut, rechecking it, adjusting other ones, I got it pretty dang good.
Oh, the carburetors still look perfectly synced. We just got to get the gas tank back on and take it for a ride. Alright, I got the carbs all synced up. Now it's time to get the gas tank back on and take it for a ride just to make sure I fix the problem. Let's see how it does on the road. It starts up really good. Feeling good so far. Man, I think this might be it. We'll see. I've been wrong before, but it is running so good though. If it keeps running this good the whole ride, then we are mint. Man, It's not even like hiccuping at all anymore. It just feels so much happier. Yep. Hands down the best the bike has ever ran. Let's do another 0 to 60 test. In second gear. That felt good. Let's do a couple more of those. Last run, here we go. I think that's as good as it's gonna get. Doing some off-roading here. Looks like we found ourselves a little pond. Look at that. Now that looks like a good bass pond. Little baby ducklings, I don't want to scare them.
After all this, the bike was running really good, or so I thought. Then I discovered a new problem. The bike has a hanging idle.
I just figured something out about the hanging idle. See how it's hanging? Look at this. Push that down. Something weird with the throttle linkage. Hanging idle. Push it down. Stops.
So for the next week and about 3 more carburetor pulls, I did everything I could to try and fix the hanging idle. At first I thought it was a vacuum leak, so I replaced all the throttle barrel seals from the old felt seals to new O-rings. But that didn't fix it, and then I realized the top throttle slide caps, gaskets, were starting to rip, so I cut all new gaskets, replaced them, and then even replaced the screws with bolts so I could tighten down those caps really good. After I was sure there were no more vacuum leaks, the problem was still there. So I gave up on the carburetors and rechecked valve clearances, rechecked ignition timing, and I even rebuilt the spark advancer. But all this, and I still had a hanging idle. At the end of the day, the only thing that really fixed my hanging idle problem was opening up the air screws to 2.5 turns out. I know they're supposed to be 1.5 turns out, but now it idles beautifully. Check it out.
It's running beautifully. Idling beautifully too. Let's go fill it up with gas.
Sorry if this video was hard to follow, guys. It was really a lot of filming behind the scenes and just doing so much work to try and get this bike running as good as it possibly can. Once I fix all the issues, it's time to have fun with it before I gotta sell it and let it go. So stay tuned for the next video where I have a ton of fun on this bike, and it's gonna be really cool. You guys will like it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, also the notification bell, like the video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.